Welcome back to the farm. My name's Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. The thing with farming is that there is always fencing to be done. I think maybe last week I didn't talk about fencing, but pretty much every other time I've spoken with you, I have. And this week we had a few little fencing issues that we needed to deal with. One of them was that a tree had fallen down over a fence that we share with our neighbour up in the bush. And it looked like it had broken part of the fence. So what we needed to do was clear away the tree from across the fence line. We cut away all of the big pieces and were able to use those for firewood, which was good, sort of doing two jobs at once. And then the smaller pieces we just moved away from the fence line. And the top wire had been broken. So we had to then walk the fence line to find where it had snapped and repair that part of the fence. Then one of the belted Galloway cows decided that the grass was a lot greener on the other side of his paddock. He kept sticking his head through the wire of our brand new stock run fence that we did just a few weeks ago to try and get the grass on the other side. So he was pushing all of the poles over because they hadn't quite set yet because they were very new, and he was sticking his head through. And then he figured out that he didn't need to just stick his head through, he could get his whole body through. So he was one morning just wandering around in the stock run. He wasn't going anywhere, it was fine, and he was easy enough to put him back into the paddock. But that meant that we had to straighten and re-ram quite a lot of the poles to make sure that they were straight again. And then we decided to run an offset hot wire electric fence along that part of the fence as well, just to make sure that they weren't going to try and push out all of the time. So that took us a couple of hours to get that done, to run it from one end to the other, and also to do a little bit that went underneath a little gate that we have in there. But that is now done, and hopefully keeping those cheeky cows in. We also then pulled down the temporary fence that we had put up around the backside of the shed where my workshop area is. We have now been given a notification of when the tanks will arrive and when the plumber can come and install those. So that'll be in a couple of weeks' time. So we thought we should clear that, get the fence out of the way so that when the plumber comes, there is plenty of room for him to be able to come in and do everything that he needs to do. And then we can plan out where we're going to put the new fence once all of that is done. I haven't shown you any dyeing of yarn in quite a while, and part of that is because I'm sort of in the transition between getting everything set up in the shed and the old ways that I was doing things. And I want to sort of wait until everything is done and ready and I can do some proper videos out of the shed. This week I had a custom order for some yarn that a lady had bought from me previously. She was working on a project and she discovered that she wasn't going to have enough yarn to finish and she needed some more of a colour that she already had. So she wanted my Speckles in Blue colour. And of course I was happy to do the custom order for her. First though, I did need to explain to her that just because I'm following the same recipe that I used last time I dyed that yarn, and especially seeing this is a hand speckled yarn, that it may not turn out exactly the same as the skein that she already had in her project. And that she will need to either alternate skeins or perhaps just use it for trims so that she's able to blend it in case it didn't end up being exactly the same colour. So she was happy with that and I dyed it up. I try and keep samples of all of the colourways that I make to see if it does compare to my sort of original batch, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I sent her one skein and there are now 3 others available in the shop. I did a full batch of dyeing because it seems to work out better than trying to cut the recipe down. And I'm really looking forward to getting the water tanks in so that I can then start to actually dye in my workshop space. And I've now found a really great spot in the shed that is perfect for drying yarn. It gets sun almost all day, and when I open up both of the sliding doors, it gets a crosswind, so it's able to dry quite quickly. So what I'm thinking of doing is perhaps setting up a drying rack from the ceiling in that part of the shed where I can roll it down, put all of my drying yarns on there, and then roll it up so that it's out of the floor space, and it'll still get the benefits of the sun and the crosswind from that area. The socks that I showed you last week are all done. Obviously, I really enjoy getting back to knitting socks, and I just zoomed through them. So here are the finished socks with their heels in, ribbing all done. I do need to weave in the ends, but apart from that, they're finished. And as soon as I finished this pair, I cast on a toe for another one of the same yarn. I have a huge ball still, and I think I said I've got another skein of this as well, so I'm going to be knitting the stripy socks for quite a while. So what I've done with these ones, so that when they're in the wash and I've got all these pink and grey striped socks floating around, this first pair I just knit completely plain. This pair I'm going to put a little ridge of purl stitches on the front of each sock, so that I'll be able to match these up as a pair. And as I continue to do more socks from the same colour, I'll make sure that there's something slightly different with each one. One might not have ribbing on the top, I might do some really short ones, I might add another little stitch pattern of some kind, maybe a couple of little ridges of pearls or whatever across a row, just so that when there's a pile of socks, I can match them all up together. I also got back to behind the spinning wheel this week, and it's been a long time since I sat and spun. I think the cooler weather has sort of made me want to get back to doing that. It's nice to sit with the heater on, spinning wheel, but still looking out at the sun outside when it's too cold to actually be outside. So I finished the braid of the Corriedale top from Colleen's Crafts. It is beautiful pinks and greens and yellows and purples, really my colours, and I feel like I've done a really good job with the spin. I was able to be much more consistent in the thickness, and I've also been able to be much better at joining as I go, you know, taking out pieces and not getting clumps where I've joined, and I feel like I'm much more in control. So I've got a full bobbin of this, and before that I'd done a full bobbin of a plain sort of dusty pinkish sort of rhubarby kind of colour, I would call it. So what I'm thinking I might do is ply these two together, just do a 2-ply, and hopefully using a plain will bring out the colours in this and not muddy it down too much. And I will have hopefully a fun, pretty yarn that I can actually knit with. So I've got a couple of skeins now of hand-dyed yarn that I think are good enough to actually use to knit with. The first few weren't so good, but the last couple that I was able to produce have been, I think, to a standard where I can knit something up. So now I'm thinking about what projects I might be able to do with my hand spun. I don't have a lot of like yardage of anything, so probably a hat or a cowl or something along that sort of line might work. So I'm looking at a few different projects, and hopefully I will be able to decide on something that I can knit and which one I will try knitting with first. And it'll be fun to sort of move on to that next stage of the spinning journey of actually using my own yarn. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.